Good evening, all. Here's another recording on Gelvin Valley. Thanks for being part of this. As you may recall, in the last episode, we finally finished our harvest after I don't know how many episodes. Probably everybody's sick and tired of watching it, but now we deal with the aftermath, and we've already been kind of preparing for that. As we see over here, we've windrowed every single field. So now we're going to be turning all of that straw into bales. But first, before we do that, there was some kind soul who shall remain nameless that just voluntarily came and fixed all of our equipment. Isn't that amazing? Oh, except they didn't fix the combine. Well, they missed one. We'll forgive them for that. But everything else is all nice and fixed versus having to do it internally here. So whoever did that, pat on the back for you. Thank you for helping our little farm out because, as you can see, we are quite in the hole. So we're gonna, because we don't have any money, and I know we could take care of that by selling some grain, but I think what I'm gonna do instead is we're gonna get going on the bales, and we're gonna try to close some of that gap by selling bales. So why don't let's see, I got this tractor here, I think, which is the stronger of the ones that we have. Where did I park the baler? I almost wonder if I stashed it in this building here. Nope. Well, so over there, nope, I'm not seeing it. I don't see it in there. Just kind of take a gander around. Aha, there it is, over there. So close I can throw a rock to it. And I'm just going to follow kind of what I did while harvesting. It's kind of funny that it puts a square bale on there even though this is a round baler. I got to try to remember though where I started all the windrows. I kind of think that I go in this gate here. Yeah, it looks like I did. So I gotta say I'm not too used to a round baler. In real life, I think we tended to use a square baler when I worked on the farm. But I know there were some of the neighbors that had a round baler. But in this map of all maps, uh, with the crazy hills, oh look at that, we're already almost full. This is one thing where I don't particularly care for a round baler, is you can't just drive and get the job done. You gotta stop and let the bale out. The square balers are quite a bit more efficient in that regard, where you can just keep going and they keep pooping them out the back as fast as you can make them. As long as you got twine, they keep kicking them out the back. So, but on this one here, we obviously got to stop and let it out when we hear the alarm bell go off. Now I'm starting to kind of pull a hill, and it's going to warn me. I'm going to send it out. Let me just see here. Is this fairly flat? It's a little steeper. I just climbed that area. I'll let it out. But you're going to notice something. It stays put right where it is. And this particular episode will maybe show a few things modding wise that we can do to help ourselves out on these bales. I had to do something because you get up on this steep area, every doggone bale was just falling off the hill, rolling down the hill, and tumbling head over heels, and they'd accumulate kind of in a pile at the bottom. I don't know that I ever had any jump the fence, but I mean, it was pretty funny. You could see them going to where they would gather speed and bounce quite a bit. Yeah, see, that's sitting on a slope, and I pretty well have it to where it isn't budging. So we'll maybe go up to the top of the hill, and then I'm going to show you what I did that anybody else could do, and this might even work in later versions of the game. I'm pretty sure it would work in Farm Sim 17. I don't know about 19 and beyond. Seems like they changed quite a lot of the Lua coding engine after Farm Sim 17, but there was a lot of similarities between 15 and 17 when it came to Lua coding a lot. Whoops, there's the other mark. Once again, we're still on a pretty hefty slope, but I think the bale will stay put. So we'll just kind of continue on around. And I don't know, I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do. I can't imagine everybody's gonna want to watch me bale a whole bunch of bales and just let me drone on talking about this, that, and the other thing, kind of like I've been doing. You know, I remember someone referring to it as a chin wag. This chin wag with myself, me, myself, and I, because I don't even know if anybody actually will ever. Oh, hold on, I better let this one out, and then I have to come back and pick up the rest of it. Maybe this is why or how some YouTubers do the live streams. You know, maybe they just get tired of talking to themselves. I guess I'm not really there yet, frankly. Well, yes I am. In some ways I am, in other ways no. I haven't minded talking in here as long as I have something to say. But I really don't like the sound of my own voice. But I think I've heard that's pretty common. So sorry for my voice, but it's the only one I have, so it kind of is what it is. Now I think we're heading downhill, so on the steep. It's just steep when I'll get up. Yeah, so before, there's some I'm going to show you here in a minute. As soon as I get through the first round, I'll show you kind of what I did to keep the bales on the hill sticking as if they have Velcro on them. And show you the code so you can duplicate it on your maps if you have the gravity challenges that I've been having on this one. Because I did a bad job of wind rowing, I let this little bit here, and my OCD will not allow me to leave it in the field. So let me pop in the cab just for a little bit. I think if we simply, keyboard steering. Oh, I noticed I'm missing some. Whoop. I always think there was a mod out there at some point. I know it was for FS17. Maybe it was also for Farm Sim 15. I seem to remember the modder Decker, I think his name was Decker, MMIB. He did a lot of script mods. He's the author behind the soil mod, which, I mean, that's another thing I maybe need to activate in this map at some point, just to learn how to do it. You know, it's something I never did. It'd be nice to. I mean, I did a little bit, I think, when I was helping someone else, but I never got the full effect of it. But anyway, Decker, I think, made another mod. He made several of them. One is the Glance mod we've used in here. Follow Me mod. I think he made the Compass mod that tells us what direction we're going. And I think he had one that was for bales, with a round baler in particular, to where you didn't have to stop and it would automatically kick out the bale. So it must have accumulated a little straw. I think in real life they really do have to stop. You know, when they kick out a bale, they can't just keep going. But I think there's a lot of players that probably don't like that, and they'll do it for a few, but after a while they want to just drive, which I do too. And you know what, if I could afford a square baler, or as soon as I can, I'm going to get me one of them things, and we're going to be done with this little round baler. But for anybody watching, you know, if you want to leave in the comments, they obviously have round balers for a reason, and I can't imagine it's for stackability, but maybe it is. You know, it seems to me a square bale, you could be more efficient with your space, but a round bale, There's probably really good reasons for it. I just don't know what those reasons are. Maybe it's even just the cost of the baling, for all I know. So, oh yeah, I said I was gonna show how to mod this a little bit. We'll save where we're at here, and I want to take you to some coding, maybe a couple things actually. So this has the GMM mod in there. That's something German, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it has the manure and lime solid, to put in the map. So it has that also installed. So that's kind of what this code is up here. So this little snippet up here is really all that was in this file. This is a file that's called from the mod description file of the map, and so it loads this when the game loads. But here's what I did. I added this little snippet of code in here. I even left a note. It's incredibly steep. This is to help the bales adhere better to the hill so they can be picked up. This is all I did. So I set up my own little bale fix. You always got to put it as its own function, if you will, or its own table. You got to put a function within a table. So this is a function for bale fix, which mirrors a function that is in the bale object. The bale object, that's bale.lua, that's something the Giants wrote. It has a set node ID, and its only argument is node ID. Node ID is basically in the 3D object, it's the center of the bale. It's if you want to pick up the bale, you grab it by its node. That almost sounds bad to say it that way. Now, because we're overwriting it, that's where you put in this thing called super function. You could really put anything here, uh, but I think it's common coding parlance to call it super function. That's how the Giants do it when they overwrite their own functions. So the first thing it says to do is, hey, we know you're coming here because this is overwritten. First, do everything that the regular bale set node ID function does. Do all that here. And then once you're done with that, then do this down here. And so what this is asking is if the bale has a diameter, meaning if it's a round bale. So we're detecting that it's a round bale as opposed to a square bale. So if it's a square bale, it'll do this regular stuff and it's going to totally bypass our extra coding that we're doing here. But if it has a diameter, that means it's a round bale. So meaning it's not equal to nil, then it's to do this stuff here. Set angular damping at 0.65. Set linear damping at 1.0. Now I've already forgotten kind of what these physics terms mean. Linear damping, angular, I mean that almost seems like something that would kind of turn a little bit. So maybe how hard it would be to turn a bale. Linear dampening seems kind of like on a line. I don't think that has anything to do with friction or that kind of thing. Suffice it to say, I experimented a lot with these particular settings in the i3D editor, Giants editor, when I was working on rock spawn, because I had this problem where a rock would be spawned on a hill, and if it was round shaped, well, you'd watch a silly thing kind of just roll down the hill, like it's just over like there was no dirt there. Well, that just isn't reality. In reality, when you would pull up a rock out of the ground, it uh, it would stay right on the hillside where it was. So I tinkered a lot. If you look in the editor, there are some entries for angular damping, linear damping. Of course, there's also other entries in there, but when I tinkered with these two, and when I had the values set here, it seemed a reasonable compromise for keeping objects on a hill where you have them, uh, a reasonable compromise between that and being able to move them in the game as a dynamic object. And when I say move them, like in the case of a rock, it'd be like what happens to that rock object when you put it in, say, a front loader of a tractor or one of the wheel loaders. Does it stay put when you drive around, or does it flop around all over? Does it fly out? How does it behave? So I kind of set the values here. And honestly, on a regular bale, I don't know what they're set at. All I know is It's not these values because the bales just kind of go downhill. And maybe a real farmer that has experience with round bales can say, I imagine if you get on the right slope, that your bale will indeed roll to the bottom of the hill, but probably not at the speed that you could see them done in game. And so then this last line of code right here, which the game picks up on, is this is where we tell it to overwrite bale set node, overwrite the existing game function with the one that we say to do it with. So the function now equals overwrite this with this, and of course bale fix is what we defined up here. Real simple snippet of code. I don't know anybody here if you're still playing Farm Sim 15, but if you have trouble with your bales sticking to the hill, your round bales, and you want to make them stay put instead of falling all over, feel free to put a snippet of text in an existing Lua file that's already affixed to the map. And if anybody wants to know how to do it, if you don't have any scripts in the map, maybe make a note in the comments or whatever, and I can describe further how to do it in a modding video or what have you. Another thing, kind of while we're here, this was for some work area stuff. I think I've bellyached about it in some of the videos. When you have a rough map and it isn't entirely smooth, if your planter, your cultivator, your plow isn't exactly touching the ground, then it isn't going to do its intended function. So this is some additional code in here to basically, I think if the distance is up to, what is it? I think I have a threshold of a meter. If it's within a meter of the dirt, it's going to do what it's supposed to do if it's activated. So yeah, and maybe one other note while we're here, and then we can go back in game. I kind of tongue-in-cheek said all of our equipment was repaired because I frankly get sick and tired of it. It's the hired help that damages it. Here's where you can adjust. This is in the repair specs Lua file. If you ever want to come here, it's line 68. Most vehicles don't have a damage sensitivity feature in it. This is trying to load it up from the vehicle. Well, you would have to specifically set up your mod with the damage mod in mind, and very few, I think, were set up that way. So odds are what this is telling it to do, get no nil. So it's going to look up the value of damage sensitivity. If it can't find it, which it won't in most cases, it'll use the value that we give it over here. Well, the original value was 1.0. And so you can imagine how frequent and how much damage would happen with 1.0. I've had it on 0.01 and it still is abysmal. So I'm going to knock it down to 0.05. We're not going to see the effects of this in game for a while until we start hiring our equipment again. But I'm just going to make that little change. There's also a cost factor up here. So I think what this script does, the little bit that I've studied it, is it looks up the cost of the tractor or implement that is damaged, and it bases the repair cost on how much it would cost to replace it. So I almost think it's dollar for dollar. So I may tinker with this in the future just to reduce the cost a little bit so it isn't quite so exorbitant. There's got to be a happy medium somewhere in there. I continue to like the idea, but it's been very costly. So let me head back to the map. I'm sorry about wasting everybody's time on that. We'll try to crank out a few more bales for the end of the episode. And like I say, I can't imagine how many people are going to want to watch all of this, so I may just have to do a lot of this off camera and not force you all to suffer through it. Because for all I know, you maybe like round bales even less than I do. So, but at the moment, it's all we have. So we're gonna make do with what we have. It sure is tempting. I may look up Decker mod so that when I'm in here, I don't have to stop and run the lever. And if anyone watching this is really up on realism, they're probably saying, well, no, you don't dare do that. But, at some point, even in a game like this, the intent is to relax, and at some point, when you're trying to do it and take care of it, it could even become work. And if it starts to feel like that, then obviously you need to do something a little bit different in game to help yourself out. And this might be one of those areas. You get tired of stopping, backing up again, opening the hatch to let out the bale. Maybe it's time to look for that mod, which just allows us to keep driving, knowing that we'll slow down, but that way we don't have to do all the hard work of stopping and pulling. I think there's actually a little bit of haze this time of day. Looks like it's a little misty. Let me see if I can get my weather thing to show up. Oh, for goodness sakes. That bar, I've been doing one other Let's Play series at the moment, kind of over on Mono Farms and Farm Sim 17. I don't think I see that bar across the top of the screen, so it must have something to do with Farm Sim 50. I just don't know what. But I would love to get rid of it, whatever it is. It kind of just is an eyesore up there. I think I mentioned earlier back in the day, I only knew square bales. I worked on Lono Farms. I think I mentioned that before. We had square balers. In the early days, it was small bales, and we did quite a bit of haying. Grandpa had a number of cows that he would feed out in his canyon property. And so it kind of was one of the first things we would do each year when I got out of school for the summer and would head up to the farm to work for the summer. One of the first things we would do is make some hay. And as someone that has hay fever and allergies to grass pollen and all that kind of thing, that wasn't the funnest way to start the summer, but like I say, it was a rite of passage. But we mainly had small bales. I got some pictures of those on my computer somewhere. Whoops. Nowadays, I think they handle it all with the very large bales, square bales. And versus in the past, I mean, they would literally hand feed them to the cattle. And some of that, of course, they still do. But now, I think with much larger bales, they handle the bales with like a forklift. Back in the day, there was hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of bales we would handle by hand to go stack them back there in the canyon. I think I mentioned Lone Oak was a type of grassy farm, and maybe I've even mentioned that a lot of that grass, straw, after harvest, one little snibbly I missed, a lot of that straw would end up getting burned. But occasionally, and some of it had to do with just how valuable burning was versus something else. Some grasses not only handled the being burnt, they needed it. It was more vital to their growth in terms of preventing disease and whatnot, like some of the finer fescues. But there were other varieties where if you burned it, you could potentially kill it. So you kind of had to know which grass was which, and then there was others where even back in the day the straw was of a different character. Not all the grass straw is created equal. And I didn't notice at the time, but there was a new piece of real estate. My uncle took over when I was working on the farm, and it was in a field of bent grass, highland bent grass, I believe, which was kind of a short, stubby grass, extremely hard to thresh. And The straw output from it was apparently something that was akin to candy if you were a cow. I mean, they really liked the banquet grass straw. I mean, you look at it, it looks no different than other types of straw, but apparently it has some kind of a oil in it or whatever that the cattle really liked. So even though it was a yellow straw, when they would dip their nose into it, they enjoyed eating it. So uh, maybe back in the day, Granddad did more Highland bent. I don't know how much maybe he ever had. This was the only banquet grass I recall being grown on the farm. You know, you had to be careful to keep a lot of these grass varieties separate. You know, one grass variety would be a weed to another one. So bent grass to what they had going at the time was basically the equivalent of a weed. So it was kind of interesting that as they took that real estate over, that's what it had in it. So they had one last crop of bent grass in it. So I remember we harvested it and they turned it into, I say they turned it into, most of it they burned. I think they were just going to burn it like normal, which it could handle. But there was a neighbor of theirs that had some cattle and he came up to make his own bales. And I think they just gave it to him for free. And all that to say, he had a round baler. I'm sorry, maybe that's too long of a story to say that I saw a round baler in a field. But he had one. I just remember he, you know, I'm going 10 miles an hour here. I think this guy here with his round baler, he was able to go even faster in real life. But then, yeah, I remember him stopping periodically to spit out the round bale. Continue on or whatever. Yeah, and this is gonna be a trial. But that's okay. I've already done this twice before in this field, and maybe something I'll point out here too as I do this. Can you see down on the PDA map in the lower left-hand corner? There's a mod I made in Farm Sim 17 called IC Bales. You know, if you look here, I'll just show it up here. See in field number 2, which is where we're at, see all these little dots? These are basically little tiny pictures of straw bales. So I had this mod in Farm Sim 17 called IC Bales, and basically whether it was a bale or a pallet or a rock, some kind of a 3D object that was somewhere on the map, it showed a picture of it on the PDA map. Because what sometimes would happen is, you know, you get in a field, and it doesn't have to be a big field, but you can occasionally miss picking up a bale that maybe is, you know, rolled over to the side or kind of is hiding under some foliage. You've got some bushes at the edge of the field or whatever. So visually you may miss that, and so I wanted to be able to see where all the bales and such objects were on the map. So I created IC Bales, and now that I'm doing a few things back in Farm Sim 15, it was something I wanted to have, so I kind of backward adapted it to work in here so I can continue using it and see where all my bales are. I don't know that it's a huge amount of help. Most of these, of course, you know, we can pick up visually just by looking at them. And by the way, when we come through here and pick up these bales, I really don't do a very realistic job of it. I would do horrible at handling bales. I don't think anybody would want to watch that, because it'd probably take me 10 years just to get a single bale on the trailer, especially using keyboard steering. So I have a trailer. Well, I say have. We're gonna have to lease it because we're too poor to buy it. Look at how far we're in the hole. But it will let us at least bid, and it auto loads the bales, and we can haul them up to the selling point. Yeah, it kind of gets hard on these hills too. kind of like I mentioned over on my series I'm doing on Golden Oak. Last night, my wife got a call from where she works. She was diagnosed with COVID. She's a nurse, so they have to test her frequently because of the patients she's with. And blame it all, she has COVID. And come to find out this morning, I took a test. I have COVID also. We don't know where we got it. We tried to do everything right, and we got vaccinated and all that. We still ended up with it. It seems to be a fairly mild case of it, so, but basically I'm confined at home and can't even go to my office to get some papers and what have you, but at least I can tap it in and work from here if I need to, so that's helpful. I have a cold at the same time, and I feel a little funny with the COVID, but it doesn't seem to be giving me the symptoms. I had it one other time, and that time I had fever, chills, I lost my taste. That's pretty much the symptoms I had then. It really wasn't too bad then, but I had a couple days of fever to where I was just kind of quivering and shaking. Don't seem to have any of that now. I can taste pretty well at the moment, but maybe that's to come, so we'll see. But I felt well enough this evening that we could go out and spread some bark dust in our flower beds. We've kind of had a pile of it sitting out there for a while. We've been having a lot of rain here of late, so just gonna miss that hill. Haven't really been able to get out and spread it, or, well, I guess we could have. Maybe just had to do it while the rain. But I live somewhat in the country. It's suburbia, I guess, suburban to the town where I work. We're outside of town, maybe 3 miles, I think, we come out on the road. So we're not that far off from there, but it's in the country. And I know a lot of people on our street fairly well. There's one of the gentlemen that lives here, he and his wife and children. He owns this little Kubota tractor. And bless his heart, he came over tonight and he helped us spread our bark dust. It's just amazing what having a little machine like that around. And this really, it isn't much bigger than a lawnmower. We got a riding lawnmower, a John Deere tractor style lawnmower. I don't know why the deck is maybe 3.5 feet, something like that. It isn't much bigger than that, and it has a front end loader. He also has a rototiller on the back. Just a neat little setup, but I'll tell you what, if you go buy one of those, you're going to pay through the nose. So he has this, and I know he's looking for Project X to come help people. I will end up paying him a fee for it. I told him to send me a bill, but it's worth every penny. Because we have on the place, how much parking space we have? I think it's called 1.5 units, but I'm not sure how that translates into cubic yards. It's several cubic yards. So, in the old days, we'd have to scoop it into a wheelbarrow of some kind. We'd haul it out and dump it, front end dump, or kind of over the front. And that style of, oh, for goodness sakes. Excuse me, I'm kind of just tooling along here, not paying any attention to the baler, evidently. That never would have happened in real life. No. Never's a mistake like that made. Of course, I'm being tongue-in-cheek. Back on the farm, I remember a certain combine operator, I think it was my belated grandfather, actually. It's always good when it's the boss that makes the mistake and not the hired help. Let me just say that. But I think this particular day, we were combining and he accidentally left his unloading auger on for an entire round. I don't remember how big the field was or just how far into it he was, but apparently he had just unloaded his seed tank, and he made a round, and he looked back to see how much seed he has, and found out there was nothing, because he had left it all out on the ground, which pretty much means it was lost. So mistakes happen, so hopefully I can be forgiven for not putting it down to capture the straw. I'm getting a fair number of bales off of this piece, so we still won't make very much, you know, we take these up and sell them, but we'll earn something and hopefully start making a dent in our $40,000 hole. Because I'd like to hang on to the grain that we have in storage and wait for better prices, maybe a great demand. I know we just recently had a great demand on barley, so maybe we can get on for wheat. There, that took care of this field. Field number 2. One field of, oh goodness, I don't know how many. I'm going to be at this for quite a while. The question is whether I'm going to drag you all through it. That probably doesn't seem like something most people want to see. There we go, get up on this field. And might I say, we don't have a lick of damaging yet. Isn't that amazing? When the boss drives, he drives like a boss. What can I say? Let's see, where is this? Where? No, I started over here. You know what? There's double gates. So we're going to head on over here to get started on this particular field here. That's where I said for right in the entrance of the video. So suffice it to say, I'm grateful for the neighborliness of a neighbor willing to share his machinery with us to help my wife and I and boys spread some bark to us. Sure made I wouldn't say it's a difficult task, but it's laborious. Made it a whole lot easier. He could zip into the pile with his front end loader and then take it exactly where we needed it in the yard, dump it off in the flower bed, and the only manual we were required was to spread it by hand. So very, very helpful. Thank you, Jesse. Of course, he'll probably never hear this, but that's okay. Well, I think if I look at the time, oh yeah, much over half an hour again already, so I think maybe I'll terminate the video here. And thank you everyone who watched. Hope you have a wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And we'll talk to you next time very soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.